Hi, Juno.
How you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good, thank you.
Excellent. So I was in the waiting room and I had this mantra in my head over and over. I will not say Keely. I will not say Keely. I will say Juno.
You can call me Keely, I don't mind.
No, no,
You
no.
know what? You're not the
Um,
first person I've had to say that to people. And I'm like, what, you think I wouldn't? She's an absolute delight. You can call me Keely. I feel like that should be a t-shirt.
well, you are a total delight in The Offer. Fantastic performance. I didn't think that I could love anything that you did more than I do with Ted Lasso, but this is pretty close. So congratulations for that.
Wow, thank you.
What was your first exposure to The Godfather, and what was your relationship to it going into this series?
So when I was about 14 or 15, my father, who's a filmmaker, he said to me when I started talking about how much I really did want to be an actress, he was said that we needed to watch The Godfather because it was one of the greatest films of all time. And he had this great setup of a projector and a screen, and I don't remember if it was on Laserdisc the first time I watched The Godfather. I think it may have been Blu-ray at that time, but he had an extraordinary Laserdisc collection that I watched when I was younger. And I remember us watching it together and being completely floored at how catatonically emotional I was by the end of the
Mhm.
film. And at the beats specifically, when you see Sonny get gunned down like that and the brutality of him being, I was catatonic about it. And then watching Marlon Brando do that scene where he finds out that his son has died and how he does so much with so little, yet it's like an entire universe. He's just swallowed it, and yet he's shooting back dead starlight or something, and you're reading it and it's one of the most profound moments I think in cinema history. And at 15 years old, being a young girl being shown this movie and being so emotionally moved by it, and also so transfixed by the beauty and the kind of how secondary the violence felt unless it was you were invested in the character,
Mhm.
blew my mind, to be honest with you. So it was a very memorable film for me from a young age. So when this project entered my universe, I was quite flabbergasted. And I definitely was very excited to tell my dad. But then also it was like this extraordinary page turner for me, because also the learning of how complicated
Mhm.
and just how, yeah, the difficulties that were thrown at these humans that tried to get this project made, and also made with the passion that they believed it should be made, and with the
Right.
people they fought for, the people that they wanted to make it with. And that also kind of blew my mind, blew my mind that someone like Al Pacino would potentially be fired
Right.
in that movie, or like just things like that that you were completely dumbfounded by, and then the masterpiece that came from it. So it was worth every single battle.
Absolutely. So you play Bettye McCartt, who is kind of the unsung hero of all of this. This is her story is brand new to me as I go into The Offer.
Mm.
And unfortunately, she died before production began. So how did you figure
Yeah.
out who she was as a character beyond what was written on the page?
So um, again, she was new to me before
Mhm.
I jumped onto the offer, and I we had this amazing moment because we were lucky enough to get a couple of weeks of rehearsals in before we actually started shooting. And Dexter Fletcher, who was our leader from the beginning and directed our first two episodes, he asked the cast to do this extraordinary thing, which it didn't matter how known the character was you were playing or how unknown, but to write your character's history up until the
Mm.
moment where they met Al Ruddy. And so, of course, I immediately went on the internet, as we do these days, to see what information I could find about Bettye McCartt, and it wasn't much.
Right.
So at that point, I just had the first couple of episodes, and a big thing that tied Ruddy and Betty together was this love of the movies, and also the fact that they had single mothers. And so, kind of with that in mind, and knowing that she had come from Oklahoma and that she had ended up in Los Angeles, I was like, okay, time to dig. And so I went down this extraordinary wormhole of figuring out different films that had been shooting in that area at that time, and what actor she may have, if she'd been working in a certain restaurant, crossed paths with and made a friendship with, that then they became pen pals, which then led her to actually end up leaving her life behind in Oklahoma and going to Los Angeles and believing that she could actually make magic, because her mother believed that movies were magic, the closest thing that you could get to real life magic on planet Earth. And it was such an amazing adventure wormhole for me. And then on our first day of actual rehearsals, we all read out our kind of character histories up until the moment where we met out. And it was really a profound experience, because it didn't matter how famous the character was that you were playing, or how well known the director was, or you forgot, and everybody gave these incredible histories, and it was mesmerizing. And that was definitely, I mean, obviously I won't speak for my co-stars, but I know for me that was a real insight into getting to know my character, and where her sort of bravery came from, and also where her vulnerabilities were. And then I mean, the writing really helped, and Nikki Toscano is a living legend in my mind, and there's a lot of Bettye in her, and there's a lot of her in Bettye, because she was, my real life inspiration on set for sure.
I love how you describe things. I love hearing you talk about your relationship to The Godfather. I loved hearing you talking about writing that history for Bettye. You feel things very deeply as an actress.
Oh my, yeah, very empathetic human.
So when I look at Bettye, I can't help but draw a lot of parallels to Ted Lasso's Keeley. They're both very independent women. They want to be a part of an organization, but they also want to break out on their own. Keeley obviously does, and then Bettye does, spoiler alert, I don't know how you can spoil history, but she, breaks out on her own as well at the end of The Offer. What do you think are the big differences between those two characters?
Decades, this time,
well, yeah.
for sure. And I think the main difference is that in The Offer, actually, we see Bettye's extraordinary friendship happening with a man, and a man encouraging her to go forth and, fight for her future and be what she wants to be. And in Ted Lasso, I think it's this extraordinary friendship between two women. And Rebecca helps Keeley see the potential that Keeley didn't even know she had. So it's a perspective of women that are learning and giving and giving and giving, and then getting back, but both from different decades and from different sexes. And what's interesting is that the reaction with Rebecca and Keeley is people are like, oh my God, we've never seen anything like that before. Two women that aren't competitive with one another. And I mean, that initially, when I first started doing press for Ted Lasso, I'm not gonna lie, kind of broke my heart, because I don't know any other female friendships. I don't know how to do female friendships without encouraging my girlfriends, and they make my universe a safe place to be my best girlfriends. I don't know what I'd do without them. And I want them to be the best versions and the happiest humans that they want to be. And so that was an interesting kind of, reaction to initially see, and then also be like, actually, it's kind of true. You don't see it a lot where women aren't pitted against each other, and how exciting to be able to put that out there in the world, because it gets really boring watching women be fighting against other women, Right. And even with Bettye, that was something that I think was a really interesting and conscious decision, that was like not being competitive. She wants to learn, she wants to learn. She wants to be a sponge. And her relationship with Andrea in the show is so brilliant. And she wants to, and, initially they're both a bit like, all right, who are you? Come on. And then so this immediate breakdown of like, okay, cool, we're going to learn from each other, and we got each other's backs. Right. And I think that both of them could be seen as, from an outside eye, you could judge a book by its cover. You could think that they're not going to carry the brains behind the blonde hair and the outfits, or I think that Bettye, actually a cool journey for her throughout the show was kind of doing the opposite to Keeley, where Keeley starts off being more of like, I'm famous for being almost famous and wearing the outfits and doing this. And then she starts sort of owning that and making it her own sort of business version of herself. Whereas Bettye actually sort of starts off more being in a suit and blending in with it can be a wallflower as needed. And then she starts to let loose a little bit until, at the wrap party, she flirts with Marlon Brando wearing a sequin mini dress. So it's like,
Yep.
there are these parallels, but also these kind of opposite journeys as well. But I think it's so cool to play two really, like you said, strong, independent, brilliant women that are also finding their own journeys, but in such different ways.
Absolutely. One of the things that's almost I won't say it's almost the beating heart of the show is that platonic relationship between Bettye and Al. I mean, it's such a remarkable thing. What do you think the importance is behind showing that relationship as a non-sexual? It's just a partnership, an equal partnership, a friendship. What do you think the importance of that is?
And also, I think even more like protectors, because there are certain things that the two of those two go through and they can't speak about it with anybody else,
Right.
So it becomes this, like, some of it's like life or death. And I think, so ride or die partner is kind of a good way of putting it. And I think the importance of that is that, you hear people throw out that phrase all the time. I don't think men could just be friends with women. I don't think women can just be friends with men. And actually they can. But it has to stem from respect, I think. But that's like, I would say that about anybody. I would say that about being friends with the same sex or with different animals, different creatures. It's about respect. You respect somebody and they're going to respect you back. You put out what you want to get back. And I think watching that friendship develop, even from the minute she bulldozes into his office and is like, I'm going to get this job, and she kind of gives him no choice. But by the end of the tour on the lot, she's convinced him, I'm the woman for the job. I want to do this with you because I care, because movies matter and making movies matter. And that's why I want this job. And that's why I'm going to stay here, because I know I'm not going to make a shit ton of money doing it right now, but I believe in it. And I think, then there's these, I love the moments where the two of them have these kind of really honest beats at the bar together. And I think that's really where you see, which that happens very early on in the show too. I think it's the beginning of episode 2 even. And immediately Al thinks of her as an equal. And you see that right from the beginning because he's learning from her, And I think that's a very special thing to put out there in the world. And I think I loved working with Miles so much. He is such a hardworking, brilliant actor. And he was so nurturing with me. And because I was nervous because I signed on later than everybody. I signed my contract on a Friday, and we were in those rehearsals presenting our characters on a Monday. And I was like,
oh, wow.
And it was fast. It was a fast turnaround. And he was just, he has such respect for females in his life. And it was such a great experience to do this with him. And I think the friendship that was caught on camera was one that really was happening off camera as well. It was because it's a really cool project. I don't think any of us, whether you're at, a high level in your career and you're working, you doing 8 different jobs at once, and I'm talking about in all the different departments, all of us were quite humbled by this job because it's about making The Godfather, which for a lot of people is the reason why people make movies. It's one of the most extraordinary films that will probably ever be made. And so nerves were allowed and communication was key. And it meant that we were such a tight-knit cast because of it. And I'm so grateful for that experience. And I think that everyone's performance, the bravery behind the choices made in that from my co-stars, I feel truly grateful to have seen that and been a part of it and gotten to do scenes with them because they really upped the bar, I think.
It's a beautiful experience. Very quick last question for you. Has your dad seen the finished project?
No, he has not yet.
I know you're excited to show it to him.
I can't wait. Yeah, I think he's going to really dig it. I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the time. Fantastic performance. I can't wait to hear everybody rave about it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.